I remember years ago, I heard a comedian quip, "I don't talk about my neighbors even if they ain't no good." This is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, Day 3 of Tzaria Metzora. She conceives and the infected one. Let's go to chapter 13 of V'ikra, Leviticus, and let's read 8 verses here, beginning with verse 1. Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, "When a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it shall become on the skin of his body like a leprous infection, then it shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. And the priest shall look at the infection on the skin of the body. And if the hair on the infection is turned white, and the infection appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous infection, and the priest shall look at him and pronounce him unclean. But if this bright spot is white on the skin of his body and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair is not turned white, then the priest shall shut up the infected one 7 days. And the priest shall look at him on the 7th day and see if the infection appears to be as it was, and the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall shut him up another 7 days. And the priest shall look at him again on the 7th day and see if the infection has darkened, and the infection is not spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his garments and be clean. But if the scab spreads further over the skin, after he's been seen by the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen by the priest again, and the priest shall look and see if the scab is spread on the skin. Then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. We've talked about this in the past, that what was being described here as we translate from Hebrew into English, it's not Hansen's disease, which we commonly call leprosy in modern medical terms. That disease tends to eat away at the extremities, the tips of the fingers, the earlobes, the nose, the toes, those kinds of things. That's not what we're dealing with here. The Hebrew word for this is sarat. It is a skin condition that reveals a spiritual malady. In other words, the body is telling on the spirit that something is very, very wrong. The general category of all of this is Metzora, one who is infected. That word, Metzora, is a contraction of the word Metzora. And Metzora is one who brings forth or spreads evil and slanderous speech, being a gossip or a talebearer. So from this, we get the understanding that it is from our mouth. It is the words that we are using against others, where we, as Yaakov talks about, we murder with our tongue. This tongue that is set on fire of hell, he says. It's a deadly poison. When we are poisoning the character and reputation of those that are around us with our words, we are guilty of being a Metzora and may become a Metzora. I hope you followed that. So I'm intrigued by this process then, where one is brought to the priest. Notice that he sees something, or someone says to him, "I see something," that is on his body, a scab, a skin disorder, a spot. He doesn't go to a physician. He goes to the priest, which indicates the matter is spiritually based, not medically based. More on that in a moment. So he goes to the priest, and the priest begins to examine him, and he can immediately see this is sarat. You must be quarantined. You must be isolated outside the camp. Or he can be suspicious of this might be. Let's give this some time. Let's shut you up for 7 days. Let's deal with this and see what happens. And he can add a second week for a total of 14 days, wherein he would either say, it's just a scab, you're clean, or be clean and go home, or he can say, sorry, friend, it's really leprosy and you need to be isolated. He may be initially diagnosed as being only a scab, but then the scab, instead of healing up and getting smaller, begins to spread. Now we got a different version of, but the same issue, and he's pronounced unclean. The issue with being unclean in this regard is that his speech has become infectious to those that are around him. It is not as though he is communicating physical disease to somebody else. It is a spiritual disease. This is easily applied to the body of Messiah at large, especially with the advent of social media. Here in the United States, we have the First Amendment to the Constitution, which says that we have freedom of speech, the right to free speech. However, even though we may offer opinions or ideas that are contrary to social acceptance, and people may reject us for what we say or the things that we express, we're free to say them to a point. We're not allowed to offer threats of violence against someone else's person. We're not allowed to offer unsubstantiated, slanderous remarks. You can be sued for libel or slander. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. There are just certain things that free speech does not include. Child pornography is another area that you can't do that. And so while you can express artistically or verbally in a lot of ways your personal expressions, there are limitations. Scripturally, you can say what you want to say, but you will be accountable, Yeshua says, for every idle word that proceeds out of your mouth. Now that will cause a great deal of fear because, we say stuff without thinking all the time. Mindless chatter. But Yeshua says, what comes out of your mouth originates in your heart. So when we say, I really didn't mean to say that, that came out wrong. Yeah, well, sometimes we use unfortunate phrasing and it's really not what we intended to say. But to blurt it all out, to slam somebody, to slander someone's reputation, to be a gossip or a talebearer, and then to say, I really didn't mean that. Well, you said it. It came from somewhere. And evidently it's something that has been harbored and nurtured in your heart. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. And so Yah is saying to us, if we recognize someone in the body that has potentially a Sarat situation, they need to be examined, not by a doctor. We're not talking about a psychologist here. They may be necessary on occasions, but you're not going to fix a spiritual issue with psychology or psychiatry. You're going to need someone who is spiritually astute. And so there's this process of being examined. And maybe initially everything seems to be all right, but you must reserve the right. We're going to address this again. And if necessary, we will address it again and again. People get offended and get their feelings hurt if we keep bringing something up at times. But the overall health and quality and stability of the body is paramount. So we have to be careful what we say, We have to be careful what we hear, and we have to be willing to be called to task about those things. Hope to see you again tomorrow. To then, shalom.